right, we are here. We are ready to get rid of the safety monitor and share some Robotaxi disengagement world premiere with you and other drama from Ford, Elon, Trump. We got a lot to go through. Might make some lemonade out of all these lemons.
A little foreshadowing there. Yeah, we actually we have a pretty jam-packed agenda today. A lot of pretty interesting stuff going on. Obviously, I think the big thing in the news, at least today, is the Elon Trump drama. But let's maybe back up a week. So last week we had our live stream where you were actually in a Robotaxi. We kind of rode along with you.
Mhm.
But I'm kind of curious. You did a great summary of kind of your findings there. But you you led this off by saying we're going to get rid of the safety drivers, or the safety observers. But you also had a disengagement, which I'm pretty excited about. So let's maybe set the screen with or set the stage with what Elon was talking about getting rid of safety operators, or at least the way Farzad queued this up. It was getting to a 3-to-1 ratio or something where it's certainly not 1-to-1 of the remote teleoperator. And I think at the point where you can actually get rid of the supervisor who's actually in the seat, that has to be an all or none sort of decision. It doesn't make sense to do that with 10% of your cars or something.
Right.
It'll either be safe enough or it won't. But for the teleoperator, you can presumably have fewer and fewer of them monitoring more and more vehicles. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so Elon says probably within a month or two. We don't know if this is the new version that they're working on with 4.5 times the model size and maybe 3 to 5 times the context window or whatever. So that's encouraging to see. Tesla already has this in their to their employees, so they're testing this internally. Also they could be working on fixes that we all know version 13 needs, even though it's really good in many areas. They could also implement those fixes and get that in for Austin.
Yeah, so talking about those fixes on V13, it seems like it was pretty similar what you had on the Robotaxi in terms of the kind of the way the software was driving to what we're experiencing in V13. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, similar, but the lane decisions were much better. So I never saw the Robotaxi make a bad lane decision. And I did 62 rides in Austin over the course of 3 days. So
7-2 for you. You blew it.
I went in, I went hard. I couldn't quite get to 69. Yeah. But what I did notice is that in 5 different instances, humans made a wrong lane decision where they were cutting into the left turn lane, like in the middle of the stack of people waiting to turn left. And I saw people turning from the wrong lane, someone driving in the bus lane for too long, and actually a dangerous situation where they were basically behind the Robotaxi and we needed to turn this way. And the Robotaxi saw it, so it waited for it to pass before it turned. And that was in a bus lane that was on the right side of the road. So it's really interesting to see that. So I do think there's some kind of improvement they made upon 13.2.9 where I do see some bad lane choices still where I am.
And do you think that's just a product of the fact that they were, kind of doing some HD mapping essentially of the Austin area where they are geofenced right now? I think that's one, I would say, semi-valid criticism for the moment that, there were these Teslas with LiDAR and, obviously they really overfit the model within that geofence within Austin. So if they have to do that to fix the lane issues that we're seeing, then that potentially might not be a super scalable solution. So I'm kind of curious your thoughts on whether this might just be a kind of manual fix or a brute force fix for that local area.
But I think it extrapolates, and Tesla's getting good data. Whenever you have a successful ride, you can potentially use snippets of that video to train the rest of the fleet on.
Mm-hmm.
So they had the very long line of people on bicycles. It's like 300 bicycles with a police escort on the front and the back. Like that's something that you may not be in their training data. It probably is, but they get another real world instance of it, and the car handled it pretty well. We don't know if it was by luck or not. So you're getting more and more of that, and you have the safety monitors there. So like right after the ride ends, the safety monitor can say, "Hey, we should train on this ride." So let's change subjects for now. I think we're a little bit optimistic on them, potentially pushing the safety monitors onto like new geofence area, and they are using them for highway. We did have a disengagement to share, and one thing I should say in preface to this video is that we've edited it so that we snip out the silent parts. So when you see the video jump from one spot to the next, that just means we were quiet. So instead of watching a boring 3-minute video, it's a minute 15. So roll the clip on that one. And what I was doing is I was trying to get on the highway when it shouldn't have. I'm not seeing the video. Are you, Matt?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Well, sad face. Let's try it one more time. If not, maybe we can just post it to X after the live stream.
Yeah. So what ended up happening was we were at a hotel parking lot, and it tried to exit the parking lot, but one of the exits was a freeway on ramp.
Bad route.
One way.
Oh, here we go.
On the highway, we're coming out of this hotel, the Wyndham. So the remote guy just had it stop, and Tesla's going to reroute the car. Car's about to get on the highway. Now we're going to back out and go across the highway instead. Not allowed on the highway right now. Just a bad routing. We're being remote operated, and I think there's some latency, so they're just being really careful with the speeds. So there's no cars around, so it doesn't have to be going this slow. I think we should be good now. So noticeable difference. So I think they just engage the system, and we are rolling again. Still connected to support agents, so I think they just want to monitor this, make sure we get across the intersection and the AI doesn't get any other ideas.
You're routed back to your original route. We are going to disconnect now. Thank you.
So I could see how this could happen with the route. I don't know how they're managing it with the map, but maybe they just missed a spot with the map, or maybe it's just unique because it's coming right out of a parking lot right into that one way. Well, away we go.
So immediately, I noticed that screen at the very beginning with like the red. I mean, it kind of reminds you of the Red Hands of Doom. Like, you've got to take over now. So it's like very clear there's like something of an issue. But it was pretty cool to see that shift to like the teleoperator mode, where you can, it just tells you what's going on. So like, to me, as someone who's just observing this for the first time, who wasn't in the car, it was very clear kind of what was going on. It didn't look like it was like unsafe or like deeply concerning in any way, or concerning at all in any way. But I'm how was it for you actually seeing that incident and going through that?
So a few observations. Luckily, we didn't have any cars behind us, like waiting for us, because we need to back up. Because essentially, if we moved forward anymore, we've been on the one way and kind of been forced to get on the highway. So when the remote operator took over and was driving the car, it was very slow. It was maybe like 3 miles an hour max. So that might be a thing because of latency. So if you ever see it going very slow or being really jerky, it's probably a remote operator driving the car. You also notice as soon as they kicked in the autonomous solution, the car immediately left the life, and like the wheels spun to the right, and we were on our way. So if you're watching the video and maybe the car backs up and goes around something, and it does it pretty quickly. That means that it's using the end-to-end AI to do so.
Yeah, which kind of makes sense. I mean, if it's being teleoperated, you want to be extremely sure that it's doing things as safe as possible. And even if there's a very minimal amount of latency, you just want to be sure that in that moment of latency, you're not accelerating right when somebody's going to come out from behind a vehicle or something like that. So it makes sense. Like, everything that you described about how slow it was and cautious while it was in that particular mode makes sense to me. And so it was just really cool to actually see how they handle a disengagement like that. Which, like, one thing I want to point out, that particular disengagement, it was not a safety critical disengagement. Like, I think there's probably going to be some people be like, oh, look, like they need remote operators because the system failed. Like, I guess technically it failed in that it tried to route you onto a highway when they were limiting their abilities to not go on highways yet. But we've seen from the self-delivery via movie or video that they released that like these vehicles are perfectly capable of going on the highways. And our lived experience on V13 is that it's completely like fine to do that. So this is an abundance of caution and them being like more restrictive than they probably need to be right now in order to just make sure they fully have a controlled environment, or as controlled as you can be in a public release like this, so that they can learn as quickly as possible and then broaden it out from there. So I'm pretty optimistic about this going a little bit wider, hopefully in the next month or two, like Elon said.
Yeah, I just think it's ironic that detractors are like, well, there's a safety monitor, but then they would have been upset if the car was unsafe, or if the car like hit a UPS truck in the first week or whatever. They would have been the first to point that out. So it's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
So let's hit the next item. We got a ton to get through. All right. So all respect to Ethan, but Ethan, before we saw this, had about less than a couple hundred followers on X. Doesn't seem to have a YouTube channel. So he said, just got a Robotaxi invite. He might have used a picture from someone's phone, because it's the same 1:03 a.m. unless they just bulk them to go out at 1:03 a.m. every day or every few days. So this is a Austin local who got access to the Robotaxi network. I think this is pretty exciting. So like Ethan, we'll see how long he lasts, see how hardcore he is, but he's not going to be flying out after 3 days.
Yeah. So I mean that was the thing that was very obvious was going to happen after the first few days up to a week, is you had people like you, Chuck Cook, a lot of others that flew in from out of town literally just to go and like blast 62 Robotaxi rides like you did. And like that's obviously not a sustainable thing. Tesla is going to continue iterating on this. In the Elon post that we showed earlier, he said, like we're learning and getting better from every mile driven. So like obviously you need the locals to start using this service. So this is a pretty interesting milestone, I think, in that we're transitioning from like this blast of attention, like all the people with the YouTube channels, like you said, getting the early access and sharing like almost too many videos to really even follow, to just like this being like normal people using it. And I think that's going to be pretty interesting. The one thing I'm kind of curious, it's good Farzad, and there's a few people that are local that are going to continue posting videos, because like they could very silently be like increasing the fleet size over time, and it'd be actually very difficult to tell how that's happening. So I guess now that the eyes, there's going to be fewer eyes on this, what are the important metrics that we might have a harder time tracking going forward to see how this is changing?
I would say it's tracking the license plates on them. If people continue to track that, it tells you the license plate of the car when it's going to pick you up. So they could track that and see if more of them are added. It's also interesting to see how he got in. So he shared that all he did was fill out the form at tesla.com/robotaxi to get in. So that was available 2 Sundays ago to everyone in the United States, and he happened to be in Austin and get that invite.
Yeah, I filled mine out like 15 minutes ago. Probably won't get it, but you can always hope.
You might be low on the list, and certainly I didn't deserve to be in the group of people that were like the first dozen or so people in the world, but it was great to try it out and put it to the test pretty hardcore for 3 days. It was hard to be in the back seat and like be filming and all this stuff for such long periods. I'm going to come up with some statistics on my rides, but one of the rides I did this with Xander Sky. We managed to get a ride that was 13.5 miles within the service area. It's like the longest Robotaxi ride that a customer has done in the current service area.
That's pretty wild. Yeah. So I'm very curious to see how this goes from here. We really are in uncharted territory in terms of like, okay, they're opening it out to the broader public now. It seemed like the very obvious like next step. Then it seems pretty likely that you'd increase the number of vehicles operating there too, just so you're kind of increasing the data rate, the amount of data that you're then using to kind of retrain the system. Seems likely that you could kind of expand the geofence a little bit after that, and then in doing so also increase the number of vehicles in the fleet. And then at some point, like
they're also hiring a bunch of safety monitors. So if you want to do this, if you're retired off of Tesla, or if you're not gainfully employed right now, but you want some adventure, I think this would be a fun thing to do for a while.
Yeah, that would be actually really fun. Probably hear some hilarious stuff. I would hope I don't get with Omar, who was blasting Barbie Girl and some other terrible songs just for the lulls.
Yeah.
But I imagine you do hear some pretty hilarious stuff. But yeah, it's just...
Yeah, we got a little disappointing news toward the end of the week from Jim Farley. He seemed to be leaning towards, if anything, partnering with Google and Waymo on autonomy. And then he one-upped us even more recently than that. And he said, I worry about how much autonomy is the right level of autonomy before we start losing the basic skills of awareness in a car. Autonomy can't substitute good driving.
That is just like the most ridiculous. That's like saying like LLMs can't replace good writing. It's like, well, no, that's exactly what they do. Actually, like that, they are superhuman at it. It actually kind of reminds me of that interview, like that panel Elon did with Jack Ma a couple of years ago. Do you remember that? Where like Jack Ma was just like saying this crazy stuff about how computers will never be able to think, and that's what really makes us unique, is like our creativity.
There's no soul in AI.
And Elon is just sitting there like, what the F is this guy even talking about? Like, it's a completely non-technical argument. Like it kind of sounds like talking with your aunt at a like Thanksgiving dinner, who's just like, no, like the car will never be a better driver than I am. And it's like, well, okay, but why? Like, what's the physics reason for why? And it's like, well, change the goalpost. Like there's no actual argument that you can pin down there. So unfortunately, I think Jim Farley gave away a bit of insight that he is not as sophisticated as maybe we were hoping he is. If he had like a very sound technical reason that he, said about like why we think LiDAR is better, and it was actually, you could tell he knew what he was talking about, I'd have a bit more respect for it. But to just like have this like totally wishy-washy, like just blanket statement based on nothing, that's disappointing.
Yeah.
So Ford FSD licensing deal seems to be off the cards for now. I think they were probably the front runner for a lot of people who were thinking about who might be the first company to license FSD. Who would you say is the new front runner, or is there one?
Not sure. So with Ford, I think they were hoping to sell their cars to Google, or to be like that perfect fit where Google needs a manufacturer and Ford is saying, here I am, I'm a manufacturer. So I think there's that kind of fit where between Ford and Tesla, like Tesla doesn't need a manufacturer for themselves. They just need Ford to make them, and then Ford can do whatever they want. Assuming they would press them into service or that kind of thing. I think it makes sense, for some like a company similar to BYD. Maybe it would be Volkswagen. Volkswagen, it has decent amount of volume in EVs. Who else is pretty big? That's a good manufacturer.
Like I don't think we're really left with many other choices. I mean, like Toyota is one, but like they're not very forward thinking on this front. So yeah, to me, it seems like you're just going to have to be slapped in the face with it. Like they're going to have to expand Robotaxi to many different areas. People are going to have to see that like the FSD actually works. And then like, which I think you can already see now, like you can literally just go buy or test drive a Tesla with
a new
hardware
Model
4 and just be like, oh yeah, this clearly works. And it's not a stretch to see how it can get even better with just a little bit more time, a little bit more training. So I don't know. I'm kind of baffled that the auto execs aren't convinced now that like LiDAR's a crutch.
So a perfect video for people to watch, we posted it to our channel, is I took a Waymo in a downpour in Austin. This was on Tuesday at 3:20 Central last Tuesday. And the rain came. Before the rain came, the Tesla app shut down. So then JC and I, we took a break at the HEB. We grabbed some bite, something to eat. I think it's some grocery store sushi, which is actually decent at HEB.
Important details. I'm glad to know.
And then a downpour came, and I purposely hailed a Waymo. And what happened was there were 3 times the Waymo had to tap out. So like having LiDAR didn't help it. It didn't enable it to stay on the road. So twice it dove into a parking lot. One of those times it hung out in the parking lot, parked for a couple minutes. And then one of those 3 times where it stopped in the middle of the road without its hazard lights on.
Oh, really? I don't remember that from watching the video. That's
yeah. And what was funny is you can choose your music in a Waymo, and I chose electronica, and the song it chose was a song called Tsunami.
Which was, I mean, it looked like you were in the middle of a tsunami. It was pretty wild.
Another negative with Waymo is it dropped us off on the curb. It's not taking the same policy that Tesla is with drop-offs. Tesla is purposely choosing a drop-off area that's a little bit, very slightly away from the destination if it's on a busy street. So it's making it so that the drop-off is safe and is not getting in the way of traffic. So I felt like Tesla has some advantages on Waymo already in that service area.
Yeah. Are you just saying that so you don't get blocked like Omar accidentally from criticizing?
Please don't block me, Elon.
That was pretty funny drama. But the Robotaxi rollout was not the only major milestone last week. We also had the first self-delivery of a Tesla, which I can hardly even believe I'm saying. We did do a live stream on this on Friday, but maybe for those who missed it, we can just do a quick recap of what happened and why it's so important.
Yeah, let's hit it.
So we're not hearing the cool jams, but I mean, this is like really wild. I mean, one of the things Elon said is that this is the first time they're aware of that any self-driving vehicle has been on the highway with no occupants. So Tesla really is pushing the boundaries on this.
Or at least no self-driving car. Maybe semis have done it.
So navigating that tricky spot pretty well.
It was like it wasn't quite a roundabout, but it was kind of a weird intersection. Yeah, super impressive. Going over some train tracks there. So we had our first delivery. This emphasizes that Tesla is cutting out the car dealer out of the equation. So you're not having to listen to some long extended warranty spiel or service contract. You don't have to deal with any of that. Also, potentially, if everything's cool with your car, but you need a little service, you might be able to, maybe you could just send it to the service center just by, them calling it from your house to the service center. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Yeah, so I think the cost savings on the delivery is probably not super meaningful to Tesla in the long term, especially since this is, going to be most valuable in Austin, which is going to be a small percentage of the overall vehicles. But what I think it does is kind of points the direction to these types of things that you're talking about, where, I mean, if you can send your vehicle back for service, you can also at that point presumably like use it yourself unsupervised. If you don't need to have a human in there to send it back and forth, then you just don't need a human in there, period, to drive wherever you're going. So the path to, kind of call it level 4, unsupervised autonomy, where you can actually be doing something else in your car, we are really close. I think you and I have been talking about it for a while, how we essentially don't believe the stats on that community tracker. Won't rehash all the reasons why, but to us it seems very probable that the actual kind of rate of safety critical interventions is more like, one every 5,000 miles, something like that. And even then I'm a little unsure, because I have not really seen any like very clearly safety critical interventions. I sent you one a while ago, and you actually counted the seconds from when the decision was made to go versus when the follow-on car that looked a little tight came, and it was like
3
arguably
seconds.
Yeah, 3 seconds. Like probably it would have been completely fine. So like I have not seen something that the actual like definitively FSD was on, and like either an accident was caused or would very likely would have been caused absent an intervention. And with how many thousands of vehicles have that now, like that's actually kind of crazy.
I'm also I'm not going to name names, but I saw a definition of safety critical disengagements where there was no car that was opposing the Tesla, and maybe is on the wrong side of the road briefly or something. And people called this a safety critical intervention, or when it's going through, blowing past a stop sign. Now, granted, we don't want this to happen, but if it blows past a stop sign, there's no other cars in the scene whatsoever. Like, there's no potential for an accident, and there's no potential for anyone to get hurt. And granted, they do want to clean that up, but
we're not saying it's not an issue, but we are saying like the risk of getting a ticket is a lot different from the risk of getting into an accident. And so we want to properly delineate between those two and make sure that we're like very clear on what we're actually talking about. It is kind of funny, even with that Robotaxi delivery, I saw some like headline from some random, the mainstream news outlet, and it was like a shocking failure at the end. And I was like, what are they even talking about? And I guess when it pulled into the parking lot to because the people were standing right there, it was painted red on the curb. So like technically that was like a fire lane where you're not supposed to stop.
Aww.
And I was like, okay, like any Waymo driver or like human being would pull over right there, a delivery driver or whatever would pull over right there, because like that's where your your user is. So it's just like they're finding a lot of people are finding any little reason to kind of nitpick on this stuff, and it's just like it's becoming so exhausting.
Yeah, it's a bit nutty. So let's move on to the next item.
All right, so let's talk a little Musk v. Trump. We had the drama. What was it, 2 weeks ago? I think that sent the stock down, to like 270 something. There was the whole Epstein pedo allegations. Really not a good look from Elon, if I do say so. And surprisingly, Trump kind of took the high road, and there was this bit of reconciliation, and then the stock, rallied back well into the 300s. I think we thought we were, kind of done with the drama, but Musk is taking a stand on this big, beautiful bill. His issue is very clearly he wants to rein in spending. And so as much as I can tell, his specific issue with this is that it's the increase in the debt ceiling by $5 trillion. Personally, I've been digging into this a bit, and it does seem like there's actually some pretty meaningful cuts to spending, as far as I can tell from like Grok summaries and my own kind of analysis of it. So like Trump, in my mind, is actually kind of doing what he thought he said, what he said he was going to do, with some caveats that like this is politics and he's not in charge of this bill. Like, mind you, this is like the Congress trying to come up with something that can pass both houses, and so there's obviously some like political give and take here. Trump's, very clearly behind this bill, but my take is there is some spending cuts, not very clearly, not as much as Elon would like to see. But the thing Elon keeps harping on is this $5 trillion increase to the debt ceiling. He's like, why are you going to increase the debt ceiling if you're, not planning on issuing more debt? And like on his face, that's a fair point. But like also there's no bill that would be passed that would like not require an increase in the debt ceiling of some amount. So like, I don't know. I think it's a bit of a stretch for Elon to be taking such a hard stand on this debt ceiling issue. But I'm curious what your thoughts are. We haven't spoken about this yet, so this is real time.
Yeah, with the debt ceiling, I think it can be a political football. So either party can hold the other one hostage on the debt ceiling. So to increase it by $5 trillion now, you're taking away power from the Democrats to hold the Republicans hostage on a debt ceiling at a later point. I see where Elon's concerned. So, he was hard at work at Doge, setting up the teams, attracting the talent, enabling them with technology. They find the savings, 160 billion in savings, and they say, "Oh, well, we're gonna institute the savings with these rescission packages." But then when they introduce the rescission package, it's $8 billion. It's like 2% of the savings, and it seems to be politically directed at Democrat favorite spending things through USAID. So I think Elon may be disappointed by the lack of Doge cuts being codified. But I do understand the concern with the debt ceiling. I'm wondering what more is at work, and the hard point for Trump is he wants certain things enacted with this big beautiful bill, but then in order to get it passed, like you said, Matt, they got to incentivize different senators and Congress people to vote for it. And unfortunately, like this is the way it's set up. Like each senator is potentially like this toll keeper or this highway person that says, "Hey, you want me to vote for it? You want to pass through me? Well, then you need to give me this.
I got to get my bite." Yeah, but that's how these pork-filled bills come to pass. So yeah, I'm honestly a little bit torn on this because it's about, I feel like it's about as good as you could reasonably expect. Now there's some stuff I really don't like about it on the energy side, so we're gonna get into that in a second here. But I do feel like this is like obviously this is not a perfect bill. Obviously, I'd like to see a little bit more, work done to rein in spending and, you codify some of these savings, either through the rescission process or like give some better tools to codify this. But, all told, it makes the tax cuts permanent. It does reduce some spending relative to the levels from before. And it's, I don't know. I just hate to see this fight when, I think Elon and Trump are both somewhat forces of nature that are aligned on like maybe 70-80% of where they are going. And so to see it get so petty is frustrating, I think, especially as a Tesla shareholder.
Yeah. But
future Oz in the house. Hey, Brian.
Elon does have his mind set to it. I think Elon's serious. When the divorce happened a number of Thursdays ago, I thought Elon was serious about wanting to cut spending or limit the debt ceiling increase. I didn't think we'd be back to this issue so soon.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm surprised by it. And Tesla investors are spooked. There's some people who may have been a little on the fence, and now they're like maybe standing on the fence. Some people bailed. There were a couple of folks who publicly admitted to selling the stock today. So people losing their patience. I think there's a potentially ugly scenario. And I'll just mention it because it could be pretty awkward. So like, what if Elon gets involved in all these primaries and is like traveling from state to state to use his personality and his fame to try and help these votes go his way? I think that might be a tough look for Tesla investors to take, where it was a little tough for people when the whole Pennsylvania thing was going down at first, but then they all benefited when the election went the way that people thought would favor Tesla, and you had that huge post-election rally, and then no one was complaining during that.
Yeah.
I think if somehow Elon could manage some reform where we're not spending so much and we're closer to a balanced budget, I think that would be, it'd be almost a miracle.
Yeah, I think so. I just think these things take time, and I mean, we are like still 6 months into this administration, like to hope for some kind of grand slam where like we're on track for a balanced budget within 4 years. With like only minimal increase to the total debt ceiling. Like I just feel like Elon is being a bit idealistic about this, and has unrealistic expectations, and is essentially picking a fight with Trump, who like this is like his baby. He wants to get this through, obviously, and Elon is out there basically saying he's gonna like primary any candidate who votes for it. So like, I don't know if you're some middle of the road senator who thought you were on board with Trump and Elon, and now you're like, well, like, do I risk like Trump calling me out if I vote against this, and like him choosing another primary candidate with all of his political power, or do I risk like upsetting Elon and him putting his like very proven political machine and all of his billions of dollars to try to unseat me because of I didn't take this serious enough. It's just I feel like it's a bit of a lose for Elon here.
And and also, is this issue really existential?
Well, like, if this was the tipping point and it was like, $2 trillion more of debt and we can't make it, like, I would say, yeah. But to me, it seems like this is like a step in the direction of how we get to a more fiscally conservative government. It's like, it reminds me of that quote. I forget who said it. It might have been Marco Rubio. Like, how do you tackle if there's 40 million illegal immigrants in here, like how you can't deport them all, like how do you handle that? Like how do you even approach such a job that big? And he just says like one bite at a time. So I feel like we're like one bite at a time, and the big beautiful bill is like this step one, which is not perfect. It's not going to solve all of our problems, but I like the Elon of 2 weeks ago where he was like, what actually can solve this problem is like 7% GDP growth. So like, why don't we focus on getting like AI that solves real world problems and advances human understanding, so that our GDP can actually grow to crazy levels, and we can essentially grow our way out of this. Like, that's actually the easiest answer, where like that medicine is not very painful, but like the cutting medicine is quite painful.
So the big beautiful bill wants to get rid of the tax credits for investing in solar and wind, which Trump and his administration are pretending like there's some solar and wind is terrible, which it's not. There are bad things you can point out with any source of energy, whether it's coal, natural gas. You've had natural gas plants freeze in Texas, like they created the issue a couple of winters ago.
Yeah.
So not only are they getting rid of these tax credits for solar and wind, but they're imposing new regulations and taxes on top of it.
Yeah, so I've been digging into this a bit. Let me do a kind of a quick rundown of some of the big changes in this latest Senate version of the bill, and then we'll switch to some third party analysis of what the potential implications are and why I think this is so important. And just a little bit of like preface here, like we are in this AI arms race with China, and we've been talking for years on this channel about how we don't have enough energy right now to meet all of our needs. And energy, excuse me, is essentially like the new oil, where you're like that's going to be what feeds these not only the training of AI, but also the use of it. I mean, we're using it so much more often now. That takes compute, that takes electricity to run the compute also. So this is super important for like our economic growth, our like geopolitical competition, to be sure that we have enough electricity to meet all of our needs. So like my mindset is like I used to run wind plants, big fan of wind and solar, but like I was also involved with natural gas plants, and like they all have pros and cons. And like the big issue is that we don't have enough of all of it. So like I would say let's try to like maybe not even incentivize, but let's just try to eliminate red tape and make this as streamlined as possible, so that like the free market can go out there and figure out what's the best mix and how can we get as many projects as possible moving forward. So with that groundwork laid, let's talk about some of the specific changes. So you mentioned, the tax credits for wind and solar. So wind primarily gets the production tax credit, which is an actual direct payment for every megawatt hour of wind energy that's produced. For solar, it's a 30 to 50% upfront tax credit on the total capital cost. So if you've got a $1 billion solar project, you can get $300 million back as a tax credit right away. So that was extended under the previous kind of Build Back Better plan of the Democrats to go all the way out to 2032. One thing developers and the capitalists in general like is certainty. So like that gave the developers a lot of certainty around, okay, these projects that we've got in our pipeline that we're spending very significant amounts of money on right now, we've got a roadmap to get them online by, let's say, 2030, and then we'll have the tax credits, so even if we're a little bit late with that time frame. So having that certainty is like extremely helpful for these developers. That 2032 time frame got pulled forward to essentially 2038. So like you basically need to get your new plant up and running immediately, otherwise you won't get that PTC or ITC. So that's going to,
you mean 2028?
Yeah, so it's it would go away starting in 2028, but then there's also this and there's
something where they need to file by September 1st of this year, so like they only have like a couple months.
Yeah, so you need to actually hit like what's called COD by 2027 in order to still get this credit. And like if you're not like fairly close to construction, if not already under construction, you're just not going to meet that timeline. So in other words, if you're still like making a couple like siting decisions, or if you're doing like your wind study and like figuring out, okay, how good is the wind resource here, you're probably still at least 2 years out from getting your project in the ground and built. And so if that's the case, then you're not going to get these credits. So
and Matt, what is COD?
Oh, sorry. Commercial operations date. So it's like, you build the whole thing, and then like you might be working for a little while, just like testing everything, making sure all your warranty stuff is all figured out. And then you're essentially going to say, okay, I'm commercially operational as of July 1st, 2025. And so that's like a very important mark in all of your contractual commitments. And then also in just how the assets operated, where you're selling your revenue commercially, or you're selling electricity commercially. So a lot of projects that are currently under development will just get axed immediately if this becomes law, because we're not going to make it by this new time frame. So the language I've seen a lot of these developers using is that they feel like they're getting the rug pulled out from under them, and I would say they are. They were operating under one set of expectations. I'm actually okay if like they wanted to pull these credits forward a little bit, but doing so aggressively, like all you're doing is like killing developers, increasing uncertainty, and I just think in a like capitalists are supposed to play by the rules that are on the field. And like, it to me, it'd be like, in halfway, like in the third quarter of a basketball game, all of a sudden you just decide that like lines past the arc are now worth 6 points instead of 3. It's like, well, wait, like that completely changes everything. You can't just change that in the middle of the game. So that's what I don't like about it. Is just how severely that's changed. A couple changes to nuclear. There's this reduction of this 45Y, which is going to mean that future advanced reactors can't claim that credit. Hydropower has I would say probably a bit of a slight net negative. Hydrogen,
but the oil industry loves hydrogen, Matt. So what happened with hydrogen?
Yeah, so a couple different things. It did eliminate there was this dedicated like green hydrogen credits called a Section 45V that was eliminated, and there's only this 45Z credit that remains, which is like the oil and gas companies will actually probably like that because you can essentially generate hydrogen off alternative sources of fuel, and still get that credit. So I don't know. It just seems like that part was like structured to piss off the the environmentalists.
So they got rid of the cleanest hydrogen and kept the dirtier version.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the coal gets some nice goodies here. There's a mandate that 4 million acres of new federal leases must be opened up, and it streamlines their permitting so then in conjunction with the reduction of the credits to renewables, coal is looking a lot more attractive if you've got more supply of coal coming online. That'll lower your cost to operate. So coal's looking a little pretty here, which, like, based on my experience, I don't think this actually helps coal too much. Like, I don't think you're going to start seeing a bunch of new permits to build new coal plants because they're already so uneconomical on their own, like just on how expensive it is. So this is just like going to make the existing coal plants slightly more profitable, I think. And I'm like, what is the point of that strategically as a country? And then natural gas gets a pretty nice benefit. They're restarting some offshore leases and some onshore leases, opening up some areas of the Alaskan coastal plain, accelerating some permitting. And then there's some, so that should reduce cost for natural gas, which you could certainly argue is a good thing for the country. So like, that stuff I actually don't mind too much. This actually goes to some of the stuff Howard Lutnick was talking about of like, we've got this huge like natural balance sheet of like all this federal land and the natural resources, and like we should be opening this up to permitting. Like that's like I'm kind of fine with that, but to do that and then at the same time be like pulling the rug out from the renewables projects, I'm not a huge fan of. But maybe if we have this kind of third party source or summary, I want to pull up, and this is from a group called Segway Infrastructure LLC, I think it is. Do we have that ready? Maybe not. Here it is. Okay, so this is this group, just as a bit of a preface. They are in this renewable infrastructure space, so they're certainly biased here. But I think it's certainly clear that you're going to have some projects canceled as a result of these. So what you have here is like existing projects which are planned to get to the COD date, this commercial operations date, by certain years. And they've got an estimate of, this blue line is the draft that was in the House Ways and Means Committee. Then you've got like the House resolution, and then the Senate finance draft. And then this dark red line is the latest Senate draft from June 28th. And this is actually like the harshest in terms of the projected amount of cancellations on both solar PV and wind. So you're basically saying that like 40% roughly of your projects that are 2028 or later would be canceled just because they wouldn't pencil out anymore. So, maybe that number is too high because these are estimates, but still, like, to my initial point, we want as many projects as possible kind of going forward to meet this growing demand. Let's go to the next slide.
So this is like half of the planned projects are canceled.
Yeah, almost. Yep. The number that I've been keeping in the back of my mind. Yeah, projected to be. The number I've been keeping in the back of my mind is like what like this total like energy challenge that we have right now of there's like huge build out of data centers and just load growth in general. By all estimates I've seen, it's about 150 gigawatts of incremental load growth. And so if you see the original blue funnel here, like there was a chance we could get there. It was probably not going to happen. Like I think most of the estimates I saw were actually kind of saying that something in like the 100 megawatts by 2030, or sorry, 100 gigawatts by 2030 was a bit more achievable. But like with this latest version, if you believe these numbers at least, then you're only going to be at like 107 gigawatts by 2030 of new generation capacity. So like just if nothing else changes in the current forecast for like AI data center load growth remains as is, like we've got a real problem on our hands, because they're like, as this subheader at the top says, the supply of new power plants cannot match the industrial data center load growth. Like if you talk to the GEs of the world or other gas turbine makers, they don't have enough supply to meet this 150 gigawatts. In fact, they can probably only do 50 gigawatts cumulatively by 2030. So solar and wind was kind of poised to make up that difference. So if you're gonna cut 40% of those projects, then all of a sudden this this gap becomes even more significant. So the natural implication for this is going to be that electricity prices will go up, and data centers, fewer data centers will get built than otherwise would be the case, and that could actually harm our competitiveness in the AI arms race. So then let's go to the next slide here. Yeah, so I think the headline here at the top is just that the solar and wind projects represent 74% of planned new generators. So like if you look at the interconnect queues, like almost all this new load growth is from solar and wind projects. So if you're cutting generator growth by 60% on like the vast majority of this load growth, like you're really putting yourself strategically in a bad place. And then this last one is actually, we don't need to read through this, but maybe we can leave it on the screen for a second.
I think I see the word rug pull.
Rug pull, yeah. Well, I think that it is like this, this Segway group that pulled these slides together. They're clearly an interested party, but like as a neutral observer who worked in this space and kind of knows how these incentives work, like this is definitely a rug pull. Like it's extremely aggressive in how it.
And this is probably another reason why Elon's pissed off.
Yeah, well, it's just so dumb. Like we need
an AI arms race with China. We want to locate manufacturing back to the U.S. We have other new users of power that need power suddenly and can't wait 5 years for the interconnect process. You need power now, and here we are just kneecapping the power generators.
Yeah, I think Jesse Pelton, who does some amazing analysis of all things energy on X, had the best summary, and he said, "This isn't shooting ourselves in the foot; it's shooting ourselves in the chest." And like, it really is. Like this is going to do very bad things for our overall competitiveness as a nation, and for like what was already going to be a pretty rough problem in terms of not enough electricity supply over the next 5 years to meet the growing demand. This significantly exacerbates that problem.
All right, so changing topics.
All right, something happy, hopefully.
Deep breath. Lemonade. There were some big updates with Lemonade. Really big one from the CEO. Maybe we should focus on that one because the other one's a bit nerdy. Okay. The CEO posted a, I'll just call it insanely bullish letter on Lemonade's 10-year anniversary as a company and 5-year anniversary from IPO. Extremely bullish on AI, and was describing the advantage, the lead they have in AI, and going into that, even went so much to talk about what Warren Buffett said about AI. I think Warren Buffett was recently fairly dismissive about it. in saying that you're better off paying some managers some money instead of like spending the money on AI or something crazy like that. It's almost like a Jim Farley type comment.
I want to read the actual quote because like when I
Okay.
when I saw this in Daniel's blog, I was shocked. Okay, so this is from the Geico or the Berkshire Hathaway meeting just recently.
Mhm.
And so it's Warren Buffett saying, people end up spending an enormous amount of money trying to chase the next new fashionable thing. Our approach is more wait and see. So right now, actually, I'm sorry, this was Ajit Jain, that their vice chairman. It wasn't Warren. He says our approach
Even
is
more damning because he's making decisions on what Geico should be doing, right?
yeah. So our approach is more to wait and see. So right now, the individual insurance operations do dabble in AI, but we have not yet made a conscious big time effort. To which Warren Buffett added, I wouldn't trade everything that's developed in AI in the next 10 years for a Jeet. And I'm not kidding about that. So like basically saying this one executive you think is going to be more valuable to your company than all of the developments in AI over the next 10 years. Like, okay.
Yeah.
I would much like if I was an investor in Berkshire Hathaway and I saw that, I would be horrified. Like
Yeah.
that is just
Well,
that is not good.
I'll give Warren a cookie. Like he loves Ajit Jain and Greg Abel. They've been his lieutenants for a very long time, maybe like 15 years. It's been a very long time that they have helped out at Berkshire Hathaway. He has all the confidence in the world with them. But as we've seen personally, Matt, you and I, but Lemonade has seen with their operations, AI brings significant savings in automating processes, making people more efficient, and bringing more value to the customer. It's the value from AI is clear, and you just need to get busy implementing. It's not, it's not about talk. It's not about hype. It's about implementing, and you can do it in your business just using text-based AI. Like you don't have to be using cameras and sensors and accelerometers. It's using text.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like there's no way I could stay on top of like all those latest developments and the big beautiful bill and handle everything else that we've got going on in our just day-to-day responsibilities without AI. So it's the value that I'm able to contribute individually has increased significantly. And I would say consistently as the new models that have got better and better. So I would highly encourage everyone to read this blog from Daniel Schreiber, the CEO, in its entirety. As I was just reading through it, I was like, oh, like this is obviously true. And like, this is the way a company should be structured. And he basically goes through like the whole bear case against them. And I would say like pretty thoroughly eviscerates it. And like, we're not just, like perma bulls on Lemonade who are never going to criticize or anything. Like we actually did issue a bit of warning on their reinsurance. So we try to stay very level headed, but man, reading through that blog, I was just like, this is the right team. Like they're focused on basically like 10xing the business with almost no increase in operating expenses. And if you just model what that does, like it should be a financial analyst, like best dream. It's it really is super exciting stuff.
So I'm taking a little risk. I'm sharing my screen. So it's lemonade.com/blog. And then it's the one where it's Lemonade turns 10. That's how you can find it. It is really good.
So I know we're close to time here, but we should at least touch on the reinsurance change to Lemonade. Do you want to tee that one up or should I grab it?
You go for it.
All right. So Lemonade, as a growing business, they have a responsibility, as all insurance companies do, to set aside some amount of capital to cover any claims that might happen. So if you have some, big hurricane that comes through and destroys a lot of property, you need to have enough capital to keep your regulators satisfied that you can meet all the claims that may be paid out. So that's the reason Lemonade couldn't just like 4x their business overnight, for example, because they would need to significantly grow their capital base. Now, one of the ways that Lemonade has been able to grow revenues by roughly 30% per year despite being like a small startup company that's not profitable yet, is through the use of reinsurers. So they have historically offloaded about 55% of their risk to these reinsurers, who, you know, basically pay or take a bit of a premium. So like, you know, they may pay out 80 cents on the dollar, you know, in claims, but then they might take another 4 or 5 cents on the dollar just to cover their administration and profits and everything else like that. So, so typically about 55% of Lemonade's business has gone to these reinsurers, and that it was kind of been the expectation that it would stay around there. And then maybe in the long term, once Lemonade stabilizes, that rate would come down. Yesterday, they announced a successful renewal of their reinsurance program, but they noted that they were dropping their reinsurance rate down to, or amount down to 20%, which was like, that's a massive change. My initial take, a lot of people were saying like, oh, this is great news because like if all goes well, they'll be making more money, they'll be more profitable, which is a good thing, but it certainly also increases risk. So I won't read this whole post, but essentially I said like, hey, this could be good, this could be bad. It certainly increases risk. And the analogy I dropped was, it kind of reminds me of when Tesla introduced $5 billion of funding via debt rather than equity in 2017, which like absolutely increased the risk of bankruptcy for the company. And I remember Aswath Damodaran, who's like the professor of valuation, basically like calling this like the single worst managerial like CFO mistake he's ever seen in his life. And like there's this thing as such thing as an optimal capital structure where you want to be like around 50% debt, 50% equity. And Tesla at the time was like, you know, it was just, yeah, it was objectively, if you follow finance theory, it was the wrong thing to do. What turned out happening is they ended up not diluting when the company was at like a $40 billion market cap. Instead, paid back that you know, that debt with just a small amount of interest expense, instead of needing to issue a significant number of shares, which would mean each one of the shares that we're all holding today would actually be worth less had they not taken that more risky approach.
So let me cut to the chase. So one of your concerns was that this drop from 55 to 20% was not Lemonade's choice. And the CEO of Lemonade, you know, he took a break from his awesome letter, and he said it was 100% by design and at their decision, their election. So, you know, they could have done either way, but that was their decision. So they're feeling really good about how they're underwriting the risk. They're feeling good about like, you know, potential catastrophic risk. So tell us what you think this decision means.
Yeah. So you good job on cutting right to the chase there, because, you know, if it wasn't their choice and their hand was being forced, that's not a good sign. But if it is their choice, then that means that they are extremely confident that their pricing models are sufficient to kind of weather any potential storms, you know, literal and figurative, I guess, that could be coming, which could, you know, cause them to not have adequate liquidity to meet their needs. So they're at the same time stepping on the gas pedal on their revenue growth, which significantly increases the amount of capital reserves that they need to keep on their balance sheet. And they're reducing the amount of reinsurance, which also like increases the amount of capital reserves they need to have on the balance sheet. So the fact that they're doing both of those things aggressively, you know, at the same time, means that either management is being reckless, or that they know that they've got the goods and they're very confident that like this is just a way to increase profitability and maybe pull forward the date at which they become profitable, and in the meantime generate more cash flow along the way. So I think with that clarification Daniel provided, it's actually a very bullish commentary on their outlook in the near term.
So if you're a short seller who's made a lot of money shorting actual frauds, and you're short Lemonade, and you see Lemonade's done this, I'm sure the conclusion.
Talking to you, Chanos.
I'm sure you're going to say, well, I don't trust management. But like, here's the CEO, he's coming out publicly and saying it's their choice. So I think that's pretty clear. I'm guessing we'll get skepticism from the shorts who are, short, fantastic looking high growth company like Lemonade. So we covered a lot today. Elon, maybe he'll fix our deficit in a few years. Who knows? That's pretty exciting, but
or maybe he'll be deported. Who knows?
Yeah, it could be awkward. He could be deported. Maybe the government takes all his companies from him. Who knows? The Robotaxi rollout is looking good. Elon's confident on getting rid of the safety monitors, at least in like the older geofence area, as they expand the geofence or whatever. Elon didn't get like super specific about it. And we covered the big beautiful bill, all that drama. He's Matt Smith. I'm Bradford Ferguson. And with that, we're going to say bye for now.